welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down action theories. I'll be covering structuration, symbolic interactionism, phenomenology and ethnomethodology, and critiques of action theories. Now, structuration isn't technically an action theory, but it has some elements to it. That's why I'm going to be including it in this video. So action theories are basically focusing on individual actions and agency rather than structures, and how that influences and impacts an individual and also society's trajectory and life. So this video is actually because one of my lovely subscribers requested this. So if you have any video requests, be sure to email me or comment them below, and I'll definitely bump them up on my list of videos to make. So we'll be moving from more macro theories like structuration to the micro, which is phenomenology and ethnomethodology. So let's start with structuration first. Structuration shouldn't be confused with structuralism, which I talk about more in this video, so check that out if you want to learn more. Structuration is all about how agency and structure work together and both influence human interaction and behavior. This is kind of unique as lots of theories are on like either really macro or really micro. So this is a good like kind of mashup. And personally, I find I tend to agree with this quite a lot. And Anthony Giddens was the main proponent of it. This is who he is. And he said that an individual's autonomy is influenced by structures, and these are maintained and adapted through the exercise of agency. So you can see that they actually interact with each other. Agency and structure aren't like completely separate things. They don't act in a volume, they work together. And all our actions accumulate, reinforce and impact other individuals and structures in society, such as like the patriarchy, class structures, gender structures, etc. So whilst we have our individual agencies, structure also impacts and affects how we live. They limit and can reinforce us. So key concept in structuration is reflexivity. And this is really important because it means that instead of being passive in our identities and who we are, we are able to shape and reinforce them, move them, flip them around, whatever, according to who we are, because we're constantly reevaluating ourselves. And this is important because we're not 2D beings. We evolve, we change, right? So like you've probably changed a lot in the past 5 years, even the past year. I definitely have as well. So you'll really be encouraged to reflect and use reflexivity in your own research if you're going to go on to university to do sociology. So according to Giddens, I'm going to read out a quote here. Self-identity then is not a set of traits or observable characteristics. It's a person's own reflexive understanding of their biography. Self-identity has continuity. That is, it cannot easily completely changed at will, but that continuity is only a product of the person's reflexive beliefs about their own biography. So as you can see, this is all a product. We are a product of our own thinking, our interactions, and our own actions, because we're continually changing. Everything we say, everything we do is shaping who we are and who we're becoming. And Giddens also believed that we live in late modernity rather than post-modernity, which is like a complete fragmentation of what we know. Like there's so much change, there's so much choice that we don't know what to do, but rather modernity is just like a exaggeration of modernity. So, you know, society is still based on traditions, but we have a bit more choice, we have more freedom for our own actions and our own thoughts, and we're more like liberal, although we can question what liberal means. And to sum up structurations, there are 3 types of structure that Giddens proposes. The first is signification, where meaning is produced through speech, language, and discourse, so things that we're saying and the meanings that we're making. Secondly, the second type of structure is legitimation. So when social actors interact, we're enforcing and shaping and producing meaning through these. So when we stop at a red light, we're reinforcing that a red light means stop. Because, you know, technically a red light isn't going to do anything if we drive through it, right? But we know there are social repercussions, i.e. being fined, or you could get into an accident, which is pretty bad. So we don't do that. So we reinforce the meaning of the red light by stopping at it. And thirdly, the third structure is dominance. So this is kind of self-explanatory. It's, you know, having power, especially through resources. Secondly, let's talk about symbolic interactionism. Symbolic interactionism is concerned mainly with how society is created through the individual interactions with each other. And these are meaningful interactions with other individuals and the social world. Symbolic interactionism was one of the alternatives to structural meta-narratives like functionalism and Marxism. And the main proponents of symbolic interactionism and interactionism in general were Mead, Goffman, and Bloomer. Those are the three that we're going to be focusing on today. So firstly, George Mead, his main work was on the concept of I and me. So who is me, who is I? It's a bit confusing, but let's lay it down. Me is the social self, and I is the response to me and the individual's impulses. The I is a subject, whereas the me is an object. What does that mean? It's all a bit confusing and philosophical, but basically, Mead argues that socialization starts with community and interaction. We cannot know who we are without knowing and comparing ourselves to other people. And this comparison isn't in a good or a bad way, just as a point of reference, right? So I, who I think I am, might be different to me, who other people, what other people project onto me. And Bloomer took this kind of further and emphasized the subjective interpretation and the meanings that people assign to interactions. He actually dismissed the idea that you can predict phenomena, and he thought that we should actually only be focusing on interpreting things that have already happened instead of trying to generalize and assign meaning and predictions to things that haven't happened. And so this has obviously implications for research. So according to his perspective, we shouldn't be doing things like hypotheses, and we should be doing things like inductive research instead of deductive research. So inductive research means that you are moving from more general observations and going down into a specific theory, whereas deductive research is going from a theory and generalizing outwards. Thirdly, let's talk about Goffman. He talked a lot about dramaturgy or dramaturgical analysis. So his idea was that life is a theatre. Life is a stage. We're all part of a show and we're just actors on stage, right? So we have onstage and backstage personas, and people's interactions show patterns of cultural scripts. And it's not clear what role people will play in their everyday lives in different situations, and so we'll have to improvise. And these performances are called presentation of the self, where we try and make an impression, we create an image in other people's minds of us. And you can probably find that that's kind of true in your own life, right? We have personas. We present a different side of ourselves, on camera versus at home versus with different kinds of people. And he's not saying that this is good or bad. It's just a kind of how it is, right? And you could probably argue that this is true or false for yourself. But in fairness, we do sometimes have to, make a good impression, for example, at job interviews. So this is somewhat true. So let's talk about phenomenology and ethnomethodology. If you find this topic confusing, don't worry, you're not alone. I also used to struggle with this. And to be honest, half the battle is trying to pronounce the words and remember what they mean. So phenomenology is based on the idea of phenomena, right? The only phenomena that we can be sure of is that we are conscious beings, which means that the only thing that we can study are things that we experience, how we experience things as conscious beings. So we can't really be thinking about random abstract hypotheses that we don't even know are true, right? Because we don't experience them. We can only study, how we drink water, this mug, because I am currently experiencing it in real life, and you're experiencing me through this camera, through this YouTube video, I mean. So one of the ideas was to actually be free of preconceptual ideas or pre-causal ideas that we don't know about because we don't experience them. And ethnomethodology takes even further by saying that life is an illusion, right? This is just all an idea. This is all just a illusion of life. We are just studying ideas and concepts at this moment in time. And social order is constructed in the minds of social actors. It's not actually real. So we're actually creating this in our minds as we speak, and they could probably argue that what I'm saying right now is just in my head. So it is a little bit confusing, but don't worry if you're confused at all. If you need further clarification, definitely ask your teacher. So yeah, it's kind of difficult to empirically prove ethnomethodology, but it was kind of an alternative and a reaction to social facts, because Talcott Parsons, and if you remember, we're talking about structuralism, these facts are kind of subjective and constructed in our own heads if you're going from an ethnomethodologist point of view. So in terms of criticism, the main criticisms are obviously that, structures still exist. Structures do have an influence and impact on our lives, whether we like it or not, whether we admit it or not. Structures still impact us, schools, institutions, all these are historical traditional structures that have been around for quite a while, and a lot of us are brought through these systems and have turned out the way we are because we have gone through those systems. But at the same time, it is also true that us humans have created these systems, and therefore by us going through the system, we're simply reinforcing it. So yeah, this is just really good food for thought, and also hopefully this was useful, because action theories can be a little bit confusing, but personally I find them really interesting to think about and philosophize on. But when it comes to the exam, these are the main points that you'll probably need to remember. But yeah, just don't worry if you have any questions and are wondering how to do exams. Check out this video, and I will definitely have a video on positivism versus interpretism coming out later in the next few months, hopefully. So look out for that, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.